Norris said it was a matter of when, not if, he and his teammate Oscar Piastri would come to blows on track regarding their championship battle. Within the last couple of laps of the Canadian Grand Prix, we saw Lando connect with Oscar in a way that took off his entire front wing and required him to retire from the race. And while this was a bad judgment call on Lando Norris's part, and it cost not only himself but the team and Oscar points in this race, I actually think it's a pretty good indicator of how exciting the battle between these two McLaren drivers for the championship is going to be. One of the reasons why it was so disappointing to see Lando make that move and end up ending his race entirely was because overall, despite a poor qualifying, he was actually the better McLaren driver in this race this weekend. Lando qualified 7th while his teammate Oscar qualified 3rd, and by the end of the race they were neck and neck, Lando having moved his way through the field, having managed tires on his first stint quite well, and having the pace to openly attack his teammate on track. And had he not made that poor move, I do think it's possible we would have seen him overtake Oscar before the end of the race. Obviously, the battle between those two drivers kept Oscar from being able to focus on overtaking Kimi Antonelli for a podium, and instead that ended up with Kimi Antonelli getting his very first podium in Formula 1, becoming the 3rd youngest driver to do so. But the thing that I think is exciting about this incident, as silly as that seems like it is to say, is that one of the things that we saw between these two drivers last year, Oscar and Lando, was that Lando was more hesitant to make a move on his teammate that could result in problems for either of them. And we've seen Oscar be willing to take more risks on track between the two of them. While today did not pan out for Lando, I think it shows that he is moving towards being more willing to take those risks. And he obviously was willing to take responsibility for making that move directly after the crash, and obviously it's disappointing. It's disappointing to see a driver that is in contention for a championship not be able to finish a race. However, what it does show is that Lando is willing to make those moves. I do think we're seeing this turn where both of these drivers are willing to take risks. And that type of risk-taking from both drivers lends itself to the type of championship battles we've seen from other really exciting teammates. This is the same type of incident that we saw between Lewis Hamilton and Jenson Button when they were both fighting for a championship on this very track. And while I definitely didn't want to see Lando lose 10 points in this battle, this type of fight makes the race a little bit more interesting, given that McLaren already has such an insane lead in this championship battle. And today opened up another factor. Max Verstappen is closing that gap between himself and the two McLaren drivers for that World Drivers' Championship. This specific incident has shaken things up in a way that I think the rest of the season is going to be so much more exciting, because Lando has to come back from this incident and keep himself on track, and Oscar has to prepare himself that Lando is finally a little bit more willing to take risks. And both of them have to prepare themselves for Max Verstappen realizing that he may be able to close in on another championship title. And I'm curious how you feel. Despite the fact that this was categorically Lando's own fault, do you feel like this means he is locking in a different way to his championship battle with his teammate? And do you feel like now that Max knows he's a little bit closer, we might see a 3-way battle or even a 4-way battle if we count in Mercedes for some really exciting racing for the rest of the season?